that sound familiar?
Yeah.
So did that mean all the people, by the way?
No.
No? Who was left out? Minors, kids, right? Who else? Yes. Who? Women? Women couldn't vote till when?
A long time.
1920, not 1960. That would be bad. 1920. Let's see, who else? How about, yes? Colored people, any people of color, like black people, brown people, right? Yes. Only white men who own property, that's right. So, who in this room would have been able to vote? Are there anybody? Is there anybody? Maybe one or two. So, anyway, what happened was all those groups started speaking up and standing up and saying, no, we should be included too, right? Does this make sense? And so now kids are doing the same thing. Young people all over the country are speaking up and standing up and saying, we should be included also. And it's even international, right? This is a human rights issue. Oh, wow, more students. Come on in, everybody. Yeah. We're just... something I was doing. Hello? Are you guys with me? All right. So, young people, wow, speaking up and standing up, kids. What a world it will be when young people really have a voice. But young people have been leading the way for many, many years, all through history. Young people have been in the forefront, standing up for a better world. Yes, do you believe it?
Yeah.
But, you know, in order to do that, you need to have some rights. You think so? Some rights, yeah, that's a good idea. Yes, well, you do have all these wonderful qualities. I'm actually a nurse, and I work mostly with kids and teenagers. Yes, like you. So wear your seatbelts, yeah. And, but you have these great qualities, which I found out of working with so many kids. So what are some of the great qualities kids have? There's one that Einstein, you know Einstein? He was kind of smart, right? He said, you have a quality that's even more important than knowledge. What could be more important than knowledge? Imagination, yeah. Let's hear it for imagination. Come on, come on, come on. Imagination, yes. You're like, yes, it is. Imagination. How are you going to make a better world if you can't imagine a better world, right? And that's what you are so good at. So these are your wonderful qualities. You have creativity, you have ideas, you have imagination. But to make your contribution, to express all of these great qualities, you're going to need some rights. And they did a study recently and said, oh, it's so terrible. These kids today don't even know their rights. But I know Girls in Government is working on that, right? Yeah, you know your rights thing, yeah? You don't know your rights either? Okay, well, let's hear one of the rights. How about the First Amendment? What is one of the rights of the First Amendment? Yeah. Freedom of speech. Let's hear it for freedom of speech. Come on up here. Come on. Come here. Come on up here. Come on. Let's hear it. Freedom of speech. Okay, tell me your name, Matthias. Matthias, okay, that's great. Can you tell me one example of how you used your freedom of speech lately?
I tell my parents when I want to eat ice cream.
You told your parents when you wanted to eat ice cream. All right, okay, Matthias, let's hear it for Matthias. Nice going. So I'm wondering, did it work? All right, yeah, he got it. What else? Yes, my dear? Come on up. What are you gonna say? Freedom of what? Freedom of speech also. All right, here's for freedom of speech. Who's got another one? Yes? Freedom of what? Assembly. Come on up here. Freedom of assembly. Let's hear it. Yeah. All right. Somebody knows about the freedom of assembly. Yeah. Tell me your name, my dear. Kimura, that's a pretty. So the right to assemble, have you been using it lately? Like maybe this morning when we're assembling? Right now? Right now. Yeah, all right, let's hear it for the freedom of assembly. Good, Kimura. You know what? Only 9%, Kimura, you just kicked it out of the ballpark because only 9% of Americans know that. You just beat out 91% of Americans. Wow, go for it. Yes? Freedom of religion, come on up. The freedom of religion. Wow, that's a 2-for-1 special. You have your right to have your religion. And what is your name?
Abby.
Abby, go for it. Only 16% of Americans know that the freedom of religion is part of the First Amendment. And have you been using your freedom of religion lately?
For Passover.
For Passover, go for it, Abby. All right. Here's to the freedom of religion. Wow. 16% of Americans know about that. And Abby is one of those special few. Wow. Yes, my dear? Whoa, I can't believe you. Come on. I can't believe you said the freedom to. Come on. Freedom to.
Petition.
Petition. Let's hear it for freedom of petition. And what is your name, my dear?
Holden.
Holden. Have you been using your freedom to petition at all?
I've been trying to,
Go ahead, here, you hold it. Come on.
like, I petition on, like, the ways I'm at home, like, my free time
Yes, you use petition in your free time at home.
with my parents.
With your parents, you petition them for something you want to do. Exactly, that's great, Holden. Nice going. All right. Hey, you know what? Only 2% of Americans know that. Good going, buddy. All right. And right here, yes? Which one? Freedom of the press. Come on, come on. See what you got yourself into. Now you have to come on up here. The freedom of the press. Yeah. I'm just wondering, tell me your name.
Haley.
Haley, nice going. The freedom of the press. Do you like to have the freedom of the press in a democracy?
Yeah.
I knew you would. And have you been using your freedom of the press lately to find out what's going on in the world?
Yeah,
Like, what did you do?
I spied on my siblings to see what they're doing.
Did you say you spied on your siblings to see what they're doing? Okay, all right. And that was sort of freedom of the press? Okay, all right, I'm going to give it to you. Go ahead. All right, nice going. Spying on your siblings. Yes, that could be kind of handy. Wow, I think there's a place for you in government. Just keep that up. Okay, so the freedom of the press. Guess how many Americans know that? More than one. Two. More than two. What percent? 5 times 8. 40% of Americans. Wow. Math was my favorite subject. Okay, so wait a second. We've got it all. Freedom of the press, free speech, freedom of religion, the 2-for-1 special. You can have your religion, but nobody can force you to have a religion, right? It's 2 for 1. The right to petition and the right to assemble. Wow, those are very important First Amendment rights. But wait, are they for kids? Kids? Children? Oh, yes. Who says yes? Yes. Who says no? Yes, they are. But wait, are there limits? Are there limits on the First Amendment? Even for adults, right? Adults. Can we go out in the busiest street like Ronald Reagan Road, you know, and be like, 5 p.m., hey everybody, let's go assemble. Come on, sit down in the middle of the street. We've got our rights, right? No. There's a limit. Because what? Other people have rights too. They might want to go home. They might want to go home. Just one. Wow. Okay, so there are limits to these rights. Even for adults, there are limits. Now, where the limit is has always been the question. Right, teachers? Right, civics teachers? Let's hear it for our civics and government and coaches. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for passing it on. Democracy. Democracy. Democracy means the people affected by things, policies, should have a say in those policies. Yeah. Okay, so the First Amendment. Well, people never thought that the First Amendment was for kids. People never thought kids really had many rights at all. Did you know that the U.S., people used to think that the children were pretty much the property of their parents? Yes, yes, I'm not kidding. How would you like that idea? Like, no, no, no. Yeah, there was a case around the time of the Civil War. And the courts decided, you know what, we're not going to have the children be like the property of people. Yeah. By the way, speaking of the courts, what are the 3 branches of government? Yes? Yes? Go ahead. Executive? Judicial? Legislative. All right, executive, judicial. Yeah. Let's hear it. 3 branches of government. Okay, that's great. Okay, now the schools. You're in a public school right now, okay? Are you with me? The schools are part of which branch of government? The legislative. Legislative. Because they're run by the legislature and they're paid for by taxes, public taxes. Does this make sense? Okay, and you're like, no, maybe. Okay, these are the public schools. Now, if you're in a private school, that's a whole different ballgame, right? The public schools are run by the legislature. Okay. So now let's get back to the story. When I was a kid growing up, I was your age, and I didn't know about all these rights. I didn't know about the First Amendment. I was just growing up in Iowa in my ordinary life. Oh yes, well, I've been traveling around. Even though I'm a nurse, I left the hospital a few years ago where I worked, where I was taking care of so many kids that had, been shot, or kids with appendicitis or broken bones and all these things. And I decided, you know what, these kids need to know their rights. Yeah. So I started traveling around the country on my Tinker tour. Do you like my van? Yeah, it's really been great. It's been great. And telling the story about how I grew up in Iowa. And my dad was a preacher, Methodist preacher. And, he would teach about love and peace and all those ideas that go through all religions. Love, especially. My dad, that's some of the kids in his Sunday school class. I'm not in that picture. That's my dad. And we were living an ordinary life in those mighty times, because it was mighty times. It was like now. You have also been born into mighty times. Not everybody gets to be born in mighty times. Sometimes are mighty. And that's the kind of times that we were growing up in as well, with so much going on. Do you feel it? There's a lot going on, right? And so many decisions to be made about what direction our world is going to go in and things. Mighty times. I was growing up in mighty times. That's me and my sister Hope. Yeah, she's so sweet. She lives in Missouri now. And she would make me birthday cakes and things. And there were 6 kids in our family. Well, we like to go roller skating, and we like to go to slumber parties and things like that. We didn't really know all of these rights and all these things. But one day, my dad went to Japan one time because, Japan had been our enemy in World War II. But he believed that we should be, friends with our enemies too. Love your enemy, that idea. And so he went over to Japan after the war, and he brought us back kimonos and little Japanese dolls and things. And that's me and my friend Jeff. And we would dress up in them. And he taught us to respect all cultures. Not just our own culture, but to respect all the world's culture, all people. This is a very basic idea that he taught us. And really it's the basis of our First Amendment, respect for others. Because in our democracy, we respect everybody enough to say that they should have free speech. And we respect all religions to say that all religions should be able to express their views. It's all about respect. And that's what my dad taught us. One day, Hope and I were watching the news. It's also a story of journalism and the free press. Without the free press, we wouldn't have known what was going on. We wouldn't have known that children in Birmingham, Alabama were making history. In 1963, when I was 10 years old, almost 2,000 kids, African American kids, came marching and singing out of their 16th Street Baptist Church. Have you heard of this story? Yes. These photos went viral all over the world. How the great democracy was treating its little children who dared to stand up for equality and justice and all those ideas that we say we believe in. That's what kids are so good at, saying, wait a minute, you say that's what you're about? But let's put it into action. Let's make it real. And those kids were making it real in Birmingham, Alabama that year. Well, it was really called Bombingham. That was the nickname. Why? Because the KKK, you know the KKK? Yeah, they're like the terrorists. They're terrorists. The KKK believes in white supremacy. That white people should run everything. Those are called white supremacists. Okay, so the KKK was out there and they were running everything. They thought they should be able to terrorize everybody and have their way. They said, forget democracy. We don't believe in equal speech and equal rights. We believe in us doing everything. And so the little children had the courage, had the guts, had the vision, had the imagination, as children always have, to say, no, that's not good enough. We can do better. And they got out there and they started marching and saying, well, Martin Luther King was in jail in Birmingham. And he was writing his famous letter from Birmingham jail. Have you heard of that? That's quite a letter. Yeah, that would be a good school project. The Birmingham letter by Martin Luther King from Birmingham jail. So the kids are like, don't worry, Martin Luther King, we've got you covered. We're going to get out there. We are going to stand up and speak up for equality and justice and love and brotherhood and all those things that they teach us, but we don't see happening. So they came out of their headquarters, 2,000 kids. And they were singing songs like, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. They were just letting their little light shine and speaking up for democracy. But when they did that, there was a bully in town. And he had a perfect name for a bully. Guess what it was? You won't believe this. No, it was Bull. Bull. Bull was his real name, right, teachers? I'm not making this up, am I? Bull Connor, right? It's the darn truth. Bull Connor, he said, we're not putting up with these little kids. We're going to get them. And we're going to keep things the way it's been all along. And so he put the dogs on, German Shepherd dogs on the children to attack them. Yeah. And fire hoses. The firemen, he told the firemen, go attack the children with your fire hoses. Wow. You ever heard this story? Yeah, it's kind of a famous story. And Martin Luther King said he'd never seen anything like it and that this was the turning point of the civil rights movement. When these kids stood up and spoke up. I saw them on TV. I thought they were so amazing. They were so brave. They were, in a way, they were kind of like the Black Lives Matter of 1963. And a lot of people didn't like that, but a lot of people did. They said, you go, kids, speak up for equality and justice. And so they just kept marching and saying, well, the Ku Klux Klan had a plan. They weren't going to let this go by. Yeah, Yeah, they were ready for the children. And they said, we're going to show those kids a thing or two. We're going to show them who's in charge. So they had a diabolical plan, and they put a bomb in their headquarters right on Sunday morning, knowing the kids would be at Sunday school. Yeah, that's going to do it. And sure enough, the charred bodies of 4 little girls at the church were found in the stairwell of the church. That September 15th, 1963, I had just turned 11 years old when someone came by our picnic that we were having after church. That's us at the picnic, our family and some friends. And someone came by and told us what had the Ku Klux Klan done to the brave children who dared to speak up for democracy and for equality. I couldn't believe how those people had treated those little children. Wow. Well, there was a man named James Baldwin. Have you ever heard of James Baldwin? He's a famous writer, right? Black writer. And he and this man named Bayard Rustin, who was kind of like Martin Luther King's right-hand man, they wrote a letter and said, you know what we should do? We should have memorial services all over the country for these little girls, for these brave children. And we should have memorial services, and we should wear black armbands to the services. Like this. Simple black armband. Just put it on your arm, and it says everything. It's a symbol. It's supposed to be. Did you know, okay, can you say something without using words? Yes, you can, yeah. And I know probably some of you have symbols you're wearing right now. Okay, huh? What? Okay, so they had an idea of having these memorial services around the country, and that's exactly what happened. In Des Moines, where I was living, there was a memorial service for the little girls who had been killed by the Ku Klux Klan. And this is our service in Des Moines. And there is Chris Eckhart's father. Chris Eckhart was our friend, and his father, Bill Eckhart, wore a black armband to the service along with others in 1963. In those mighty times that are so much like the times going on now. And I saw where some kids in Parkland had been wearing armbands as well, and other kids around the country to mourn for the kids who had been killed there. There's plenty of sadness now, but there's also plenty of people taking action, just like then. In the meantime, I was going on with my ordinary life in those mighty times, and here's my sisters and I at Christmas time. I'm in the middle, and my little sister Hope and my older sister Bonnie. Well, at Christmas time, my dad would read to us from the Bible because he was a preacher. And by now, we were also involved with a religion called the Quakers. Has anybody heard of the Quakers? Yeah, they're all about peace. And so my dad would read to us and light the candles of the Yule log and preach to us about the promise of the little baby Jesus, the promise of love and forgiveness, and how Joseph and Mary came up from the city of Nazareth to the city of David, and the little baby in the manger. But on TV, we didn't see love and forgiveness that the adults were talking about that Christmas. We saw war, 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 because the Vietnam War was building up right around that time, the same time. And a lot of it had to do with things that happened in 1964, which we can talk about more later. But that was also an amazing year for young people speaking up and standing up, 1964. But by 1965, the Vietnam War was really building up, and they were sending thousands of troops now to Vietnam. Who had family or friends in the Vietnam War? A lot of people, yeah. So you know how emotional it was and how intense it was. Because do you ever get to talk to your family that was in the war? Anybody? No? They don't like to talk about it, right? And I give this talk with veterans also, like at the National Council of Social Studies. We talked about this, and there was a veteran with me speaking, and he said, yeah, he's written about it, but it's hard to talk about it. The Vietnam War was just building up. So we would see things like this on the news. Probably we felt kind of how you probably feel sometimes when you see those, photographs, those news items about Syria and Yemen and Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, we felt sad, but we didn't know what to do. It's like a 7th grader recently told me, I think in Ohio, she said, I feel so sad when I see the news, but I don't know what to do about it. And we felt that same way, and I still feel that way now a lot of the time. I'm trying to think of things to do. Well, some of the older kids at the high school had an idea. What if we wear black armbands to school, and this will be our message this Christmas, that we're sad about the war, and that you adults should find a way to have peace and to negotiate a peace, at least at Christmas time. Stop the killing and have peace. It was 1965, and I was in 8th grade. And I heard about the idea, and I was nervous and scared. I didn't think I should do it because I was really, really shy. That's me with my mother and my dad behind me, and a couple of the students who wore black armbands. Chris Singer, and I think that's Ross. And we thought, well, we could wear black armbands, but then the principals heard about the idea and got together and made a rule against armbands and said anybody in the Des Moines schools, any child wearing a black armband to school will be suspended. Oh no, now I really didn't know what to do because I didn't want to get in trouble, but I had these examples of these other kids who stand up and speak up for what they believe in, like the kids in Birmingham and others. And I didn't know what to do, so I finally decided I would try to be brave and strong. And so I had an armband on, a black armband. I went off to school, and my friend Connie said, you better take off that armband, you're going to get in trouble. And I was like, but Connie, I feel really strongly about the war. And this Senator, Robert Kennedy, he had said there should be a truce in the war, and I thought that was a good idea. See, kids do want peace. Young people have a lot of knowledge, a lot of knowing there among young people. Young people know that peace is better, and it's worth working towards. And so I had my armband on, and I went off to school, and I was so nervous, and I had it on like this, and I got to my favorite teacher's class, Mr. Moberly. That was my math teacher. I told you math was my favorite subject. Well, I liked history and civics too, guys. But I got to Mr. Moberly's class, and he said he didn't really have to say anything. He just came and put a pink pass on my desk. This is never a good sign. And so I took my pink pass and I went down to the office, and my heart was beating and I was so nervous. And I got down there, and I was in 8th grade, and I sat down across from Mrs. Tarman, the girls' advisor, and she said, now Mary Beth, that's against the rules, now take off that armband. I looked at Mrs. Tarman and I looked around the office, and I had a great stand of courage and conviction came over me, and I said, okay, here you go. And I took off that armband in 5 seconds. I just ran out of courage. Well, I only had about that much to start with, and it just ran out. But I learned a very important lesson then. You don't have to have the most courage of the universe. You don't have to be the bravest person. You can be you. You can be a scared person. You can be nervous. And you can still speak up and say something that you believe in. And Mrs. Tarman said, I was kind of actually relieved. I thought, oh boy, this is great. I'm just going to go back. And she said, no, wait, you're going to be suspended. And she gave me my suspension paper. I found this a few months ago in the closet. I couldn't believe it. Always keep your suspension paper, people. You just never know when you might need it. And I took my suspension paper. I got this like 50 years ago. I took it and I went home And I wasn't sure what my parents were going to say. I knew my mother would understand. But my dad had said, now, I don't know if you kids should wear those armbands because the principals have made a rule, and it's not easy to be a principal. And so I'm not really sure you should wear those armbands, even though you do believe in peace. But we knew something about our dad. My brother John, he got suspended the next day. 5 kids got suspended, and we told our dad, but Dad, it's our conscience. Because he had always taught us to speak up for your conscience. Because he had lived through World War II, and he said if people don't speak up for their conscience, we could have the Nazis, or we could have the Ku Klux Klan. You have to speak up for what's right and for equality and love. That's your conscience telling you to do that. And so we said, Dad, it's our conscience. So then he sort of came over to our side and he understood why we wanted to do it. But we did get suspended. Oops, there's my pink pass. And 5 kids got suspended. Some people got really, really mad about us doing that. Well, there's Chris Eckhart. He also got suspended. This is the Des Moines Register. We tried to change their mind before we wore the armbands. We tried to change the minds of the principals and the school board, but they wouldn't change their mind. And so it came out in the Des Moines Register. I told you it's a story of journalism and the free press, how important that is in democracy. Yeah, then the haters. This is a postcard. I can show you the real postcard. I have it here in my bag. The haters, yes, they are out there, right? They started coming after us and sending us postcards like this and throwing red paint at our house. And this lady called me and said, is this Mary Beth? And I said, yes. And she goes, I'm going to kill you. I was like, ah! The crazy people, the haters. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. That's the stamps on the other side of the postcard. Oh, yeah, what was that red thing on the postcard, by the way? The Russians, they were trying to say that we were like Russians and that we were communists. And they threw red paint at our house. And they said, you're communists. And my mom would say, we're not communists, we're Methodists. See, somebody got that. We weren't communists, we were Methodists. Gosh, get that straight. But some people were really nice. Like, this was a Marine corporal. And he wrote a letter to the editor. He went to all that trouble to write a letter to the editor and say, you know what, these kids should have their rights. If they don't feel happy about the war in Vietnam and they're sad about people being killed in Vietnam, they should have a right to say that. And I really had to thank that man. He was really good, Harry Corey. Well, another person that's my brother John and me. Well, now we're getting kind of jazzy. We put those peace signs on our armbands. They started out plain black. But as things went along, we decided to put those peace signs on there and make it clear what it was all about. It was for peace. So another group that was really nice to us and helped us is called the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Who's heard of the ACLU? The ACLU has been around for about 100 years. Their whole thing is to stand up for the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights, and what's the 19th Amendment? 19th, yeah. Women's right to vote? Yeah, women's right to vote. They also stand up for that. And the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment, which are called the Civil War Amendments. Those are the amendments that outlawed slavery and said we must have equal justice under law. That's the ACLU. They've been around a long time. And they go to the Supreme Court more than any organization in the United States. And are they always so popular? No. Because they stand up for unpopular people, like me. I was very unpopular at that time. You saw how people were sending hate mail and threatening to kill us and things. They stand up for the unpopular opinion and they say, that's okay, even unpopular people have a right to express themselves. And that makes the ACLU kind of unpopular sometimes too, but they don't care. They keep going. So they said, we're going to have to negotiate, first of all, always negotiate, which we did, but the school board wouldn't change their mind. So they said, well, now we're going to have to take this from the legislative branch, the public schools, over to the judicial branch. Does this make sense? What are the three branches? Legislative, executive, judicial. Okay, so they're like, we're going to take this over to the judicial branch and have them check it. You know, you've heard of the checks and balances? This is how it works. Could it be possible, by the way, here's a trick question, for one of the branches to do something against the Constitution, against the rules? The Constitution is like our rules, right? Could one branch do something against the Constitution that's unconstitutional? Could that be possible? Now, you adults who know the answer, don't tell. Who says, no, that could never happen? Who says, yes, it could happen? What's the answer, teachers? Yes, it could happen. And it does all the time, right? The branches could do something unconstitutional. They could pass a law that's unconstitutional. They could pass a law that says, hey, guess what? No white people and black people can get married. Yeah, that was a law. That was a law, right? In Virginia. Till it went to court. And the court said, no, 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 that's against the Constitution. You can't do that. Stuff like that happens all the time. Okay, so the ACLU took it over to the judicial branch, and they said, judicial branch, courts, would you please check this? Because we think those schools just did something against the Constitution. The case went to court, and we lost at the district court. Okay, the district court is the lowest local court. That's like right here, okay? Then there's the appeals court. There are 13 appeals courts. So each one covers several states, except for Washington, D.C. We have our very own where I live. There's Washington, D.C. There's 13 appeals courts, okay? So this is us at the Iowa Appeals Court, which also covers several other states, all right? We lost at the appeals court. We lost at the district. I don't know why we're smiling since we had just lost, but maybe it's those peace signs we put on our armbands. I don't know. So we lost. So of course I thought we're going to lose because no big judge is going to say kids have rights. That's not going to happen. The ACLU said, no, no, wait, we're going to keep on this. We're going to try again. We're going to the Supreme Court. And they appealed it to the Supreme Court, which amazingly took the case. Why was it amazing? Because the Supreme Court only takes about 70 or 80 cases a year out of around 10,000 that want to be heard at the Supreme Court. They only pick a very few. And they said, you know, I think this case with these kids is kind of important because we have to decide if kids in the public schools do have rights or not. So they took the case, and amazingly, when I was a junior in high school, 3 years later, the court ruled, okay, how many judges are on the Supreme Court? 9. The court ruled by 7-2 that the principals were wrong, that the principals had done something against the Constitution, and that the school board had done something against the Constitution. Could that ever happen? Could an adult make a mistake? Yeah, and they did. The president of the school board had been quoted in the Des Moines Register saying that our government has decided to go to war in Vietnam, and so we must support that. But he was wrong. That's not how democracy works. We have a First Amendment. We have the right to express ourselves and express how we feel about what our government decides. Does that make sense? That makes us a democracy. We don't have to go along with everything the government or the politicians decide, right? And neither do kids. That's what this court ruling said. It said that neither students or teachers leave their right to expression, their free speech rights, when you enter the schoolhouse door. And that students are persons. Yeah, I love this part of the ruling. Students are persons. How do you like that idea? You want to be a person? Yeah, it's kind of nice. Students are actually persons, as it turns out, according to the Supreme Court, with the rights and responsibilities of persons. And speaking of responsibilities, the court said there's 2 things students cannot do under the First Amendment. Number 1, substantially disrupt school. And that came directly from a civil rights case in 1964, which we can talk about more. Cannot substantially disrupt school, and number two, cannot impinge on the rights of others, whatever that means. And that's been debated ever since. And it's probably why this case, this ruling has been cited around 6,000 times, the last time I checked, in student speech cases. Well, I went on with my life and I became a nurse, and as I said, about 5 years ago, I left the hospital. I started traveling around. I started meeting all these kids who are speaking up and using their First Amendment rights. Here's some kids in Long Island, on Long Island in New York. They had a petition because their French teacher was laid off. Here's Nathan, he's against gay rights, and he came up after the program and he said, I'm so glad, Miss Tinker, you told me I have my rights because I'm against gay rights. And the teacher said I shouldn't say that. Does he have a right to say that? Yes, because of what? Freedom of speech, which is in the First Amendment, which is in the Constitution. Yeah, he has a right to say that. Here's some kids that are for gay rights. Do they have a right to say that? Yes, because of what? Freedom of speech in the First Amendment, in the Constitution. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I love this. Destiny. She was in Baltimore, and they announced that, oh, yeah, guess what? We're going to build a toxic incinerator. Yeah, right next to your high school. Destiny's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. She started organizing with a group of students, and they stopped that. I was really impressed. I was like, go, Destiny. You're using your rights for your health. That's why I know it is good for your health to speak up and use your First Amendment rights. Oh yeah, here's some kids at the Supreme Court. I live not too far from the Supreme Court, and I love to go down there and hang around and see what's going on. Here's some kids that were there recently, not too long ago, speaking up for immigration rights. They were using their right to assemble and their free speech rights. Oh yeah, these Girl Scouts, they realized that there were no statues in Central Park in New York of women, except one statue of Mother Goose. That was the only woman, I guess you could say, the only female. And so they're having a campaign to change that. They want some statues of girls and women in Central Park. I was like, go girls, why not? Here's Anaya and Levia. They're speaking up for Black Lives Matter at a rally in Washington, D.C. Are they using their First Amendment rights? Do they have a right to do that? Yeah, I'd say so. Here's some students. Oh yeah, I was just in the Tampa area a few weeks ago, and I happened to pick up this newspaper about a high school student who's speaking up there about stricter gun laws and gun violence, and I know some of you have been speaking up about that as well. I've got my orange ribbon on today for their cause. Here's some other students in Ohio who I met last week. They were in Lordstown, Ohio, and they had written 200 students there at the high school, wrote letters to their state legislators, hopped on a bus, and went up there and delivered the letters to have stricter gun laws in Ohio. They were amazing. Well, here's the last one I'm going to show you. It's one of my favorite stops on the Tinker Tour. It's back at my old junior high school, Warren Harding Junior High, where I went a few years ago to celebrate 50 years after being suspended. Yeah. The superintendent and the principals, we planned this big celebration in the schools, and that's my old junior high school, and that's the locker that they dedicated to me. I have locker number 319 now at Warren Harding Junior High School. It's so wonderful. And I asked the students around the country, what should I put in my locker? And they said, well, put some constitutions in there and put some armbands, because it's all about the Constitution and the First Amendment and respect and love and how young people can make us a better world and a better country by using your rights, and I know all of you are also. So thank you so much for having me here today. It's wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you. Now, speaking of, maybe some of you have something to say. Who's got something to say? Yes. Come on. Come on. If you want, you guys could line up in the middle, whoever's going to want to say something or ask something. Come on. Okay, wait, here you go. It's okay, be brave. All right.
About the uniforms. Like, I feel like there shouldn't be like the actual uniforms that like people could be just like in county, like dress code, like with 4 fingers, like that should be appropriate, and like no ripped jeans like on above mid thigh.
Okay, great. So you're saying that you feel like the dress code, it shouldn't be the fingers and the thing like that and stuff? I think you are, maybe you could, it looks like you're starting a movement here. Are you starting some kind of a movement here? Wow. So this is something you all really care about. Okay, so wait a second. This is a good example. If you see something that you see is not fair, you feel like that's not fair, right? Okay, number 1, first step. You see something that's not fair. You think that's not fair, right? Oh, by the way, you know what some people are going to say? Sorry, life's not fair. Get used to it. Did you ever hear that? Well, I'm here to tell you, don't get used to it. Don't get used to it. Life should be fair. Okay, so let's say you see something unfair. You have 2 choices, basically. You have 2 choices. Okay, here. You see the dress code, you think it's not fair. Number 1, you have a choice, do nothing. Well, you can complain. That's kind of like doing nothing, right? Nothing, you have that choice. Or you can do something, yeah! Life gets interesting when you do something. So you could use your 5 rights of the First Amendment. Have you done something so far, you all?
Every time they have like a day, like you can't wear whatever, like I wear what they say you can't wear, but it's like I keep it like appropriate.
Okay, interesting. So you could just break the rule, right? You're saying just wear what you want anyway. Okay, the only problem with that approach, you're going to open yourself up for getting suspended or getting in trouble, right? Every single time you do it. It doesn't really change the rule. You're just like, you know, saying, hey, I'm going to just break that. Okay, now there is something called civil disobedience. Now this is a very important tradition in our country. If there's a rule that you feel really, really strongly is unfair, or a law, and you decide to break it, it's got to be peaceful. And you've got to be willing to take the consequences, right? You could, that's what basically Rosa Parks did, right? There was a law, you can't sit on this part of the bus. She's like, that's okay, I'm willing to take the consequences, I feel really strong, it's peaceful. I mean, you could do that. But I suggest trying something else.
Like petition?
Like a petition, you could try a petition. What else could you do? First of all, how about a little research? This could be a school project. You know what, you could actually get credit for this. Right, civics teachers? He's like, yeah, write it up. Okay, so do a little research. What do other schools have for dress codes? What is the reason? What is the reason for the dress code? And most importantly, who is actually making the decision? Who makes the decision? Is it the teacher? Is it the principal? Is it the county? You know, things like that. Find something to do. This is getting interesting. And I want you to write to me and let me know how it works out, okay? What happens. Thank you so much. All right.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey, and I think like we should care more about the kids in Africa that are like starving, because you know, like these kids are like struggling. They're struggling with water. They're getting dirty water. And I think like here's how we should fix it. We should give them shelter, we should give them food, we should give them clear water. And I think like the world would be happy if like we decided to help these kids, because you know these kids are like starving. And you know, I have a good heart, and I'm really excited to see how Africa will be like. And if we stop being selfish, you know, we could potentially do it.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. So you're saying that we should help children in other, like in Africa, who might be starving, who might not have clean water? And I agree with that 100%. The one thing I would like to add to that is also, speaking of research, you could make this a school project. Find out why those kids are starving. What is the history that led to that? And why is the water not clean? And what are the politics of it? And how did that happen in policy? And also, who is doing something about it? Like, I read about a kid, their whole project is for clean water. Yes, Manu?
Like, I read this one book in like my reading class, I think, called The Search for Water, where basically it takes place in southern Sudan, where basically they gotta find the water, like the long walk. And so this kid named this kid named Naya, which takes place in 2008, is struggling to find water, and right now she's in like this camp, and her mom is worried that like the other tribe might kill like their family and slaughter them. So I think we should care more about feeding the kids in Africa and other countries. And I think like we should also care about not only just Africa, but other countries as well, like that are struggling with their governments. Like I think like North Korea, I think, are starving.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. Good job, good job. I agree. We should care about other countries and other children all over the world. Thank you. And North Korea. Someone asked yesterday, what do you think about North Korea? I think we should try to have peace with North Korea. We should try to negotiate, like we should all try to negotiate and have peace. Yeah, I'm so glad you're thinking about the bigger picture, the world, and we should all do that, and I'm so glad that you are. Thank you. Very good comment. Thank you. All right, using free speech rights right there, the First Amendment. All right.
I have something similar to say about what Abby said.
Speak up a little louder.
Abby said that we shouldn't have uniforms, and I say the same thing. They're teaching us about our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech and stuff. So my history teacher, Mr. Heiss, said freedom of speech is not about what you say, but also about what you wear and how you act. So why can't we have our freedom of speech about what we wear?
Very good point. That's right. You're saying that what you wear is part of your expression and should be part of your freedom of speech also. So why can't you wear what you want? That would be another great project. Do a little research and find out what you know what a precedent is? A precedent is a case that was decided and now it's used by others as a legal case. Now, uniform policies have generally been upheld in the courts. But who is deciding those policies? And what are some of the variations in uniform policies? And what does a uniform policy really do, or does it do, to help students? I have seen doctorate students in the colleges writing dissertations on uniform policies and how they're not really helping kids. You can find some of those. There's a lot of evidence. You could make that your thing. I'm glad you are. Thank you very much. Good points. All right. Using First Amendment rights. Yes.
Hi.
Speak up loud.
Hi, my name's Tori, and I think that kids that leave for medical reasons shouldn't just come back to school and get blamed for not knowing their work and being pushed into tests and exams about stuff they weren't able to learn because they weren't here. And if they do leave for a certain amount of time, the teacher should be able to take them out of class and have someone there to help them out and learn what they didn't learn so they're ready for what's about to come to them.
That's great. All right. Let's hear it, Tori. Tori, I'm so glad that you raised that because Tori is concerned that kids who leave for medical reasons come back and don't get the support that they need to keep moving on, right? I mean, I'm a nurse. I really care about that. So could Tori do something about that? Yeah. Do you feel like you could? You could do so. What could you do? What's something you might do?
get some teachers behind me and sign a petition to help kids out, because the same thing's actually happening to me.
The same thing.
And I feel like we need to help these kids that aren't getting the education they need and deserve.
So glad you said that, because you could maybe get some teachers, you could get some others to join together, and that would make it better. If you can change that, it's going to help the next students who come here who are now in like 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, right? You can make a real difference for them. Thank you so much, Tori. You might get the school nurse involved. Yeah. Thank you. Good idea. I'm so glad you're doing that. Thank you. And what is that? Oh, very interesting. I like your little band. Cool.
Yes, my dear?
My name's Alexander, and I'm just trying to say something about dress code. I'm not saying that it's dumb or anything. I'm just saying, why does it only have to target girls, and how, like, they have to say anything about how, like, it's targeting girls, like, what they're wearing. It's not only about that. Why does it only target certain things, like ripped jeans, and some of the ripped jeans that girls wear are not even past their, like, knee or anything. It's like the little things like that. And I know that it's not, I know that it's like, I think we should still have it. I'm just saying, like, why are they so strict only on girls and not on guys? I know some guys wear ripped jeans, but they're not getting like referrals for it or anything. They're not getting warnings for it. It's only the girls. So I think that should change.
All right. Thank you, my dear. Alexander, right? Wow, I think you just made a few new friends. All right. Just gonna see it. You're gonna be part of the movement, the dress code movement, right? Okay, so you all who care about your dress codes, what are you gonna do next? Maybe like get together, see where we're at, see about the, what you're gonna do about it, right? Maybe do something about it. This issue is going on all over the country about dress codes, people saying that it's unfair to girls, and even some boys are saying, yeah, and why can't we wear tank tops and all this kind of stuff? So it's really girls and boys too. Okay, yes, my dear?
Hi, my name's Luciana, and I just want to say something about dress code. That instead of sending girls home because our shorts are too short or our bra straps are visible, instead of shaming us for our bodies, teach boys that we are not sexual objects.
All right. You want to teach boys that you are not sexual objects. And you are saying that with your free speech rights, and I admire you for saying that. That's great. That's great. Yeah, sometimes people say oh, girls shouldn't wear that because the boys are going to be, distracted or something. And the boys are like, what are you talking about? We're not even distracted. By the way, do you have a right? Wait a second. I want to get this straight. Speaking of distraction, do you have a legal right to distract people? Yes, you do. If you did not have a right to distract people, we would have to close down all schools. Because you could say, I might be distracted. I see, your shirt that says, weekend girls, and I'd be like, I'm distracted. Oh, no, I have to, of course you can distract people. What you can't do is substantially disrupt school. Let's get that straight. And also, there were 3 cases after ours that ruled other things that are not allowed. Number 1, no obscenity in school. And there's Hazelwood case, which had to do with school-sponsored speech. And who's heard of the infamous Bong Hits for Jesus case? Yes, that was another case where the court said you also cannot promote illegal drugs in school. So, but yes, you can distract people. That is totally legal. And by the way, I'm sorry, but there's a difference between the law and the ethics and morals, right? Just because you can legally do something doesn't mean you ethically should. Does this make sense? Right? Legally, I can say, you know what, that shirt doesn't really go with your outfit, which it does. You look great. But should I say that? No, because we want to have a better world. We're trying to all get along, right? And you look great. Okay, sorry.
I feel like...
You have to say your name.
Why should only students follow the dress code if adults are supposed to be setting an example? But they say don't wear jeans, but almost every day teachers are wearing jeans. and then they're giving students referrals and stuff, and I don't feel like it's fair that just because they're adults that they should have extra rights than kids.
Tell me your name again.
Kabir.
Thank you so much for saying that, because you're pointing out that the adults wear things that are against the kids' dress code, right? Like jeans, for example. Okay, so you could do nothing about that. You could complain, like to your friends and things, or you could do something about it, right? You could like join up with all these kids that want to do something, figure out what to do. And there's so many okay, so these students, I want to just give you an example. In Rhode Island, the kids had a group called the Providence Student Union, okay? And they were getting tired of all the tests all the time. The legislature had introduced a new test. They were going to have another test now. So the kids dressed up like guinea pigs and rats. And they went to the state legislature. And they're like, we're not guinea pigs. We're not your rat. So I'm just saying, there's creative things you can do. If you feel like, you know, the dress code is unfair, if you feel like anything's unfair, you can use your wonderful creativity and your energy, social media, you know, whatever, to make a change. Artistic skills, writing skills. You could write an article for the local paper, right? Thank you, my dear. I'm glad you raised that issue. That's another one that's being raised all around the country. Like, wait a second, the teachers seem to be wearing jeans. Why aren't we? Yes, my dear?
So, hello, my name is Damien. So what I would like to say is that this is a free public school and some people can't even afford the dress code here, so that's why they enroll their students here for free. Like, we already have to pay for the gym uniform, so why do we have to pay an extra money for the normal uniforms if we cannot afford it? Like, some people can't afford a dress code, and that's why they enroll people in this free public school. So, like, for example, if I was to use the First Amendment rights, I would use it to petition it to either decrease the amount of strictness of the dress code, if not completely remove it from the public school, that people enroll it for free.
All right, okay. Okay, Damien, go for it. You're just pointing out that it's a public school and people don't always have a lot of money to buy things that go to the dress code, right? Okay, wait a minute. Now, I would like to know, because this came up yesterday also at Indian Trails and at Lawton Charles. Everybody's trying to figure out who makes the decisions about the dress code. Have to figure that out, right? Okay, dear.
Well, talk about the dress code. Like, it's really funny how, like, people are judging us of, like, what we wear and, like, what we're trying to express. Like, if, like, we're trying to wear, like, ripped jeans or something like that, we're supposed to. Like, it's what we want to do. It's not like what people are making us do, because we got our own rights. It's funny how deans and other people or teachers and stuff like that are saying that girls are too developed. It's like really not fair for us to, like, not wear what we want.
So you tell it like it is. You said you don't think it's fair for you not to be able to wear what you want. And I mean, really the bottom line is, should you all have a say about what the dress code is? Right, that's the bottom line. So you can work on this, right? You can work on it. Maybe you could have, do you guys have a student council? Student council? Maybe you could start one. Do you have a student newspaper? Would you like to have one? Okay, so could you do something about that? Yeah, get a club going, a student newspaper club, a student dress code club, whatever. You can do something, right?
Hi, my name is Aaron. I again feel on things like on the dress code, since we're the ones that have to go through the dress code, that we should have a say, since we're the ones that have to do it. And since we're here at a public school, we're here to get an education, not to be controlled on what we're wearing 5 days out of the week. When we go out to get this education at the school, that's what we should be focused on, not on what we wear.
All right, Aaron, strong opinions and a strong voice. You have strong feelings about it. So Aaron, do you feel like there's something you can do about it? You have to figure out, that's half the challenge, is figuring out what to do about it. Who's got an idea? Who's got an idea? Oh, I see we have an idea right here. Okay, stay tuned, everybody. Wait a second.
Hi, my name is Christopher. I think that we should, like, a couple people should bring around with clipboards, and everybody who thinks that we should wear what we want, write down on one side, and everybody who doesn't on the other, and we turn it into the principal, and she goes up with the school board, and they make the decision.
That's very interesting, because you're saying that you should put the names of who agrees that they should change the dress code, names who and give it to the principal. But wait a minute. What if the principal is not the one who has anything to say about that? Then that wouldn't work, right? Huh?
That's why I said that she gives it to the school board or something.
Or maybe she gives it to the school board, but maybe the school board doesn't even make. That's why it's very important to do a little research and find out, like someone's saying it's the parents who decide, right? Do a little research. I know you can get credit for this. Find out. Dress codes. Who makes the decisions? What is the dress code in the middle school next door? Because you know what? It's actually not the same as yours. You might be surprised to know that it's different within the county even. So yeah, I think that's a good start. You know, just think of other things you can do about it. Because I mean, the bottom line is, in democracy, you can do something, right? You can always try to do something, and you're not always going to win. Of course, kids know that very well, right? You're not always going to win. I don't win most of the things I stand up and speak up about. But I found out it's also a good way of life. It's okay. It's still a good way of life. I still get to, you know, speak up about something, say something, do something, and I get to meet all kinds of wonderful people like all of you. So who else has something to say or ask about? Any other issues, questions, comments? Yes. I could tell you about, yeah, is it time to wrap it up? Okay, well, thanks everybody for having me here today, and I can't wait to hear all the things you're going to be standing up about, speak out about. Thanks for having me here today. Thank you. Goodbye.
One more time for Miss Tinker, guys.